Good afternoon, folks. We're going to wait just another minute or two as others trickle in. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to work on confirming that. Hey, Amy, are you on?
Oh, yep, fantastic. I'm great.
Great. Hey there, Sarah. Looks like you're the first attendee on.
Yeah, Sarah can't interact with you other than through the question box, but yes, she's there. Sarah, do you see a raise your hand feature? And if you do, can you raise your hand? Because I see the hand feature under her name.
Yep, so do I.
At the top, at the top bar. Yep. Oh, there it is. She raised her hand.
That's great.
So it exists.
And then I guess if she submits a question, that'll also pop up.
Correct. So she puts it in the questions box.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Tornado Test Alarm. You're reminding folks that it's 12 o'clock on a Wednesday. Good afternoon, good afternoon. We're gonna spend a couple of minutes just waiting for folks to trickle in, and we'll get started no later than, I'm gonna say 12:05. It's 12:01 right now. Amy, initially, when I started the webinar, I hit broadcast, and right on the bottom, it says the session is being recorded. I didn't have to hit a record button, or at least I hit a record button, but it seems like it's recording.
It's recording. Yep. You've been recording since you hit the broadcast button.
Oh boy. Okay.
At the bottom of your webinar, it says the session is being recorded at the very bottom of your control panel. Yep, you're good.
Great. All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started. There's a couple introductory slides, so hopefully by the time we get to the meat of it, more folks will be on. But thank you for those who are here for joining us today. This is a Food Donation 101 for Businesses webinar. It's going to be about 30 minutes, and it's brought to you by SWACO as part of our Central Ohio Food Waste Initiative. Happy Food Waste Prevention Week. This is, I know there's like a day or a week for absolutely everything in the world right now, but this is one that I truly care about and I get excited about. So thank you for joining to learn about this really important topic. I will also say that this is my first time using the GoToWebinar platform, so please be patient with me and let me know if something's not working. So before we get started, I just want to point out a couple of things. This meeting is being recorded. After this meeting, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to that recording, a PDF slide deck of the presentation, along with some useful handouts that we have shared with you today. You're already on mute, so you don't have to worry about unmuting yourself and saying something, or, you know, if you want to ask a question, there is a chat feature. It's called Questions on GoToWebinar. Unfortunately, there's not a way for you to ask a question via audio, but please, as questions come into mind, go ahead and put them. Use questions to just log your questions in. Amy is going to be helping ask questions. Those that are relevant, she'll bring up, she'll stop me during my presentation and I'll answer them. Other questions we might just save to the end. We have some time reserved for Q&A. If you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, I certainly am not. Here are just the real basic key things to know. You can ask questions by clicking on that the thought bubble with a question inside of it. There is a chat feature. Please, if you're asking a question to myself, put it in the questions area. And then there's also a couple of handouts that have been attached to this webinar. You can check those out now. They'll also be sent to you in the follow-up email. So I want to take a minute, and for those who aren't familiar with the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, tell you a bit about what we do. So SWACO is what that stands for, Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio. There are 52 solid waste authorities or districts in the state of Ohio. Every community within Ohio belongs to one of these districts, and they are responsible for providing education, programming, and ensuring that materials are managed safely. We have two sides to our operation. We're a little bit unique in that we have a kind of operational landfill part of our organizational role. Not many districts have a landfill that they operate. Most landfills are privately operated. So that is something that we do in addition to the programming that we offer on recycling, hard to recycle materials, hazardous materials, and food waste most recently. We work with businesses, municipalities, schools, and residents, and our support programming resources may look like case studies, grant funding, incentives for waste reduction. We develop signage, provide technical assistance, and develop resources and best practices. So that's just an overview of all of the different things that we do. So if you're a business or other entity that is interested in any of this related to waste reduction, please get in touch, visit our website, learn more. My name is Jane. I am one of two who work on the food waste team at SWACO. My colleague Sarah is my partner in crime, and here's our phone numbers and our emails. You can always get in touch if you have a question. Those are our direct lines, our cell phones. So again, please get in touch. We're happy to have a conversation and field any questions. The food waste work that our team does is organized under the Central Ohio Food Waste Initiative, and the partners that are behind this initiative collaboratively developed the Food Waste Action Plan back in 2019. This document is publicly available. You can Google it if you're interested in what partners in this region, in the Central Ohio region, are doing to combat food waste. We're actually putting out an updated plan in the next couple of months. So that plan will look back at the last 5 years and everything that's been done. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in that sort of thing. The other thing I'll call out before we really jump into it is that SaveMoreThanFood.org is our website that houses information about everything related to food waste. So food waste prevention, donation, and composting for all of those different stakeholder groups that we work with. So businesses, specifically food businesses, schools, and residents as well. So I encourage you to check it out, and all of the information that I'll be presenting today really lives on that website. So the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to quickly cover food waste in Franklin County as a starting point. We're going to talk about the Emerson Act, which is the primary legislation that provides liability protection for food donors in the country, around the country. I'm going to chat about a few food safety rules that you need to follow when donating food, which you're likely already following or already very familiar with. We'll cover how to find a donation partner, and we'll reserve about 10 minutes for question and answer. I'm available to go a little bit over, so if there are a lot of questions, we can definitely spend the time to answer them. There are 1 million pounds of food waste that arrive to the Franklin County landfill every single day, and that's our starting point. This stream represents a really valuable resource that, if treated correctly through composting, could be turned into a very important soil nutrient to help us organically grow food. A lot of it is currently coming to the landfill. And if folks are interested in learning about the process of the landfill, we have tours that we offer. It's really fascinating. We don't have the time to get into it, but suffice it to say that those nutrients are essentially forever lost. When we look at the material that's coming into the landfill, about 30% of it, nearly 30% of it, between a quarter and a third, is compostable. Food scraps are the single largest material that comes into the landfill at 15% of the total. 30% is compostable. About 25% are like easily recyclable, like cardboard, paper, bottles. And then another 25% is recyclable or divertible with a little bit more effort, things like mattresses, textiles. Only really 25% of what we're receiving is truly, truly difficult to recycle or repurpose. And currently, there's not a great solution to it, and so it gets landfilled. So that's just information to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Your facility, whether it be a food restaurant, a government facility, there's all sorts of different attendees today, is producing a whole host of materials, and it's really, I think, enlightening to consider how much really can be diverted. I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. And let's see, please be patient, but just so we're all kind of, there's a lot of, I'd say, myths around food donation, and a lot of folks are concerned and scared because there's just concern for liability. So we're going to take a fun poll to see, since the passing of the Emerson Act in 1996, so we'll talk more about that, but how many cases of businesses being sued for food donation have there been? So in the last about 25 years. Oh, and I think I have to open this poll. Give me just a moment.
You did.
Nope,
You're good to go.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to choose an answer. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Just a few more seconds. Looks like folks are still thinking. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close up the poll in about 5 seconds. So if you haven't voted, please go ahead and pick a choice. 1, 2, 3. Great. Looks like everyone's voted. Okay, close. I'm going to share the results. Let's see. So it looks like 4 people thought, or sorry, 50% of respondents selected 4, 33 selected 0, and 17 selected 129. The answer is 0. There have been 0 cases in which a business has been sued based on improper handling of donated food, or anything like that. So I wanted just to start off our presentation sharing that information because I think it is really debunking in terms of the dangers associated with donating food. Great. All right, moving on. So when it comes to federal liability protections for food donation, we're talking about the Good Samaritan Act, also known as the Emerson Act. It provides liability for donating food or grocery product. It was passed back in 1996, like I mentioned, and most recently in 2021, there was an amendment called the Food Donation Improvement Act that actually extends some of those liabilities. The federal legislation creates a floor for liability, and states can go above and beyond. And actually, the state of Ohio has had extended protections for many years, and is quite explicit about the things that are allowed, that really provides clarity compared to other state laws. I'll just note that throughout this presentation, I've included links. I actually didn't check if the PDF that's going to be sent out has active links, but I'll be sure to get that out to you if it's not already kind of built into the functionality of the PDF, so that you can also look at these resources if you're interested. So both donors and intermediaries that distribute food are covered under the Act. That includes all individuals, government entities, schools, businesses, nonprofits. The list goes on and on. Gleaners, people who who will gather produce from farms unpaid, who donate their time, also covered. Farmers as well. So there really isn't anyone who's not covered under this act. Anyone can donate food under 4 conditions. So the first condition is that the donor must donate apparently wholesome or apparently fit wholesome food or fit grocery product. Now, these terms are not defined in the legislation. However, the litmus test is basically if you would feed it to a family member, if you would eat it yourself, it likely meets the bar. The legislation does specifically say that aesthetic imperfections or damaged packaging does not make the product ineligible for liability protection. Often in production, distribution, and retail, food products are rejected due to bruising or dented packaging, cardboard packaging. Dents in like cans is obviously a safety issue, but when it comes to aesthetic imperfections that make food not marketable and rejected, those foods are also often really, really good candidates for food donation. There is also an exception if food product doesn't meet those standards, as long as the donor has let the organization that's receiving that food know about the product, and the organization says that they will recondition it, they're still covered under this liability protection. Now, I'm not familiar with when that would play out. I haven't had any real world experience in it, but I get the sense that that's not, you wouldn't often be donating food that needs to be reconditioned. I can't personally imagine what reconditioned food would be. So sorry, that's a limit in my knowledge. The second condition is that there are qualified donors and they can make a donation to anyone. A qualified donor can make a donation to a pantry, a food rescue organization, an individual, etc. Lower in this text, you'll see that qualified direct donors include retail grocers, wholesalers, restaurants, caterers, etc. The language in this document, which is pulled from a Harvard legal fact sheet, is a little bit confusing. I've made an edit to the text because there's not a process that an organization, a business, etc., has to go through to become a qualified donor. If you're one of those institutions, you are a qualified donor. So I've just edited that text so it's more obvious that who is and who is not a qualified donor. Non-qualified donors have to donate to a qualified donor to be covered. Basically, that means that a non-qualified donor is like an individual. So an individual cannot donate to another individual and be covered from liability. Although this is like, so like a gardener couldn't donate their food to another person in need and be covered by liability. In the real world, as an individual, you probably would follow all of these rules anyway and only donate food that you think is wholesome to another person. So the protections are pretty comprehensive in that way. The third condition is that food must be offered at a free or reduced price, and the price can only be enough to essentially cover the handling and distribution of it. If you charge anything else, it's essentially not a donation under the eyes of this rule, and you're not covered from liability. The fourth condition is that your donation was made in good faith, without gross negligence or intentional misconduct. It goes hand in hand with the first condition, which described product donated as wholesome and a good grocery product. Sorry, I'm kind of mangling that, but if you've met the first condition, you've likely met the fourth condition as well. And honestly, it's as easy as that. Yeah. So for your reference, I've included the actual bills and codes where these rules are codified. You can take my word for it, or you can double check, at least have these resources in your back pocket if you ever need to reference them. I do want to make a quick aside about date labels. The Ohio State Code notes explicitly that a presumption of liability does not arise just because a sell-by date has passed. As many of you know, the dates on a food product relate to product quality and not safety. They're created by food manufacturers, not a regulatory body. The only product that is required to have an expiration date is infant formula. All other date labels are set by manufacturers to communicate how long a product is at its freshest. And there is no guidance or regulation around whether to call it a best by date or a sell by date or an expiration date. So in some instances, there are expiration dates that are based on the manufacturer's decision are a suggestion about when that food is going to be safe for, like on raw meat. But by and large, in most cases, the date on the label is kind of a best, peak freshness timeline. So just the key takeaway is that labels denote quality, not safety. If you're going to donate product that is past the date on the label, but otherwise, seems perfectly good. For example, canned product, as long as it's not rusty or dented, is good indefinitely, really. Now, there are organizations that will not accept food that is past a certain date, but that's not because it's not safe, and don't let them tell you that that's the reason. A couple of food safety rules you need to follow if you're operating a restaurant, a food retail business. Most food businesses are very familiar with ServSafe. And this is just reiterating some of those best practices. There are some foods that need to be refrigerated, like fresh vegetables, dairy, meat, and seafood. Cold food needs to be kept cold. Hot food needs to be kept hot. If you're going to be taking hot food and donating it and you can't keep it hot, you need to cool it down within 4 hours. Foods that can be donated run the gamut. Foods that can't be donated are, things that have been served to a guest. Food that has been plated, that has been sitting out in a buffet, is not covered by this act. If you've prepared 4 trays for buffet breakfast and you've only put out 2, the other 2 trays that have been in the back not served can be donated. I've also included a link here to the full guidance that is provided actually by the City of Columbus and the Franklin County Public Health Departments. So if you're interested in seeing the whole brochure, you can follow that link. It's on SaveMoreThanFood.org as well. When it comes to finding a donation partner, surprise, surprise, I've linked SaveMoreThanFood.org again. There are a number of options. I wanted to call out 3 organizations in particular. The first 2 here, Columbus Food Rescue and Rescuing Leftover Food, will come to your location to facilitate a rescue, either for free or for a very low cost, like a $5 pickup cost. The third entity is the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. Likely you're already familiar with them. They are a pantry, part of a very large pantry network serving upwards of 20 counties in the region. They're probably a better option for like a larger bulk donation. The beauty of working with Columbus Food Rescue or Rescuing Leftover Food is that they're organizations that have worked in this area for many, many years. They work with tens and tens, if not hundreds, of pantries, churches, and other organizations that give away food. And they know what different organizations will accept in what quantities on what days. So it can be a little bit challenging to find a organization that directly donates food, because they have all these particularities about how much space they currently have in the freezer and when you can drop things off, etc. So these Columbus Food Rescue and Rescuing Leftover Cuisine really take the coordination and the guesswork out of it. They really help connect the donation with the organization that will accept it. Whether, you can also take the approach of finding a local pantry. If you have a church nearby, if you have another organization nearby, you can just talk to them about what kind of items they would accept. Whichever approach you take, there are a couple of things that are really helpful to share with this organization about your operation, about what you're going to donate, including when it would be ideal for someone to pick up from your location, or if you're going to drop off, how often you anticipate having food to donate, how much food do you anticipate donating at a single time? Obviously, the contact information for who's going to be managing the donation on your team, and then also where you're located, and if there's a pickup, any kind of direction that you would give the person picking up. Well, it looks like it's 12:30, and I really spent more than I intended to talking. So I'm just gonna share that we have prevention, donation resources on Save More Than Food. We have resources specifically for different stakeholders. And the last thing I wanted to share is that there's this app called Too Good to Go, and it provides an opportunity for businesses to sell whatever is left over at the end of the day in terms of their food at a discounted price. So you can, before donating, you can actually potentially make a little bit more back on the food that you would otherwise donate or compost, hopefully, or toss out. So that's just something I wanted to bring to your attention. I'm really sorry for taking up so much time, but I'm going to open it up and see if anyone has questions. Gosh, I just closed my questions tab and I'm not sure how to open it. Amy, could you help me out? Are there any questions?
Yeah, there are no questions at this time. Maybe Jane, if you can think of any commonly asked questions that you get in this field, in this topic, maybe that will spur the conversation.
I really tried to integrate those into the presentation. So the thing about date labels is something I get asked about. I had someone trying to donate a whole bunch of cans that were expired. It was a great story because this woman's husband was apparently kind of a prepper, and so she got divorced and had a basement full of cans to donate. And she actually had trouble finding a pantry that would accept them because certain pantries have these rules against donating food past a date label. But I encouraged her to continue to reach out to different pantries, and I'm pretty sure she found one that would accept those materials.
Yeah, that's great.
I'd be really interested, I mean, even if it's not a question, I'd be interested to hear from folks on the call if you learned anything new, if you still have any questions. I mean, obviously that's what I'm most interested in. If there are still reservations that you have, or even challenges that you've had communicating with others, communicating potentially with other businesses or staff to try to get them on board, I'd be really eager to hear your experiences. And if not, you can always get in touch with me via phone or email. All right. Well, Amy, unless it seems like someone's typing, I say we close this out. And like I said, we'll be sending, I think it's an automatic email that gets sent out with a bunch of the resources. And if not, I will manually send out the recording, the handouts, and my contact information to everyone on the call.
Jane, looks like we just did have a question. Rebecca says, I'm not a business, but wonder how most get rid of food at the end of the day.
Most businesses.
I think so.
I certainly could not speak to most businesses, but I think the standard practice is there actually is a lot of kind of, you can call it informal donation. So especially with smaller restaurants, they'll give their excess, their surplus food to employees. So that's one totally awesome way that you can put surplus food to beneficial use. Sometimes there's just not enough to donate. an interesting kind of byproduct of donation, especially for large, I mean, to a business of any size, is that once you have started to donate food, you see how much excess there is, and a business can kind of right size their production and their prep to lower the amount of excess food that's produced and save money that way. So that's a really interesting result of starting a donation program, that actually it saves money. It saves time and money in the long run. A lot of businesses, though, throw food out.
Yes, I
uh,
think that goes without saying. It ends up in the landfill. I have been the lucky recipient of many we call them family dinners in the restaurant industry over the years, where the chefs prepare food that's about ready to expire for the staff, and they can come up with some really good combinations and creative recipes. So eat many of family dinners that way. Well, Jane, I don't see any other questions coming through. So if you want, I think we could go ahead and close out today's session.
let's do it. Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Now, Amy, I'm not actually sure how to turn off the webinar.
I'll take care of it. Well, go to File, just so you know, Control Panel, go to File, and then go to End Webinar.
Got it. Okay, signing off, folks. Thank you.
Bye.